The air was crisp, the early evening casting long shadows across the dense forest. Jack had always found peace in these woods, a sanctuary away from the hustle of his small-town life. But tonight felt different. The usual chorus of birds and rustling leaves had fallen eerily silent. It was the kind of silence that made the hairs on the back of Jack's neck stand on end, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. As he trudged along the familiar path, Jack spotted movement out of the corner of his eye. A dark shape lay huddled beneath a cluster of trees. Curiosity tugged at him, and he approached cautiously. The closer he got, the more his heart raced. What if it was dangerous? A wild animal? But he couldn't turn back now. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. It was a dog, or so he thought. The animal's thick grey coat was matted with mud and blood, its body trembling with exhaustion. Large, intelligent eyes met Jack's, filled with a mix of fear and pain. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. "Hey, buddy," Jack said softly, crouching down. "What happened to you?" The creature flinched, but didn't run. Jack reached out slowly, his heart pounding. The animal's fur was coarse under his hand, and it let out a low whimper. The sound was so raw, so filled with despair, that it tugged at Jack's heartstrings. "You're coming with me," Jack decided, his voice firm despite the uncertainty swirling inside him. He took off his jacket, wrapping it gently around the shivering animal. The hike back to his truck was slow, the weight of the animal heavy against his chest. He could feel its shallow breaths against his skin, each one a reminder of how fragile life could be. By the time he reached his truck, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the forest bathed in shadow. Jack gently placed the animal on the passenger seat, whispering reassurances as he drove home. The journey felt longer than usual, the air thick with the weight of what he had just done. Who was this creature, and why did it feel like fate had brought them together? At home, Jack carefully set the animal down on a blanket near the fireplace. The warmth of the room seemed to soothe it, and for the first time, Jack noticed just how large the creature was. Its paws were massive, its legs long and muscular. This was no ordinary dog, but Jack pushed the thought aside. Right now, it needed care, not questions. He grabbed a bowl of water and some leftover chicken from the fridge. "Here you go," he said, placing the food and water within reach. The animal sniffed cautiously before devouring the meal. Jack watched in fascination, his mind racing. "You're a big guy, aren't you?" he mused aloud. The creature lifted its head, as if acknowledging the statement. Jack chuckled. "I'm going to call you Rex. How does that sound?" The animal's ears twitched, and Jack took it as a sign of approval. Over the next few days, Rex regained his strength. He followed Jack everywhere, his loyalty apparent. The townspeople who visited were impressed by the dog Jack had rescued, commenting on his striking features and sharp golden eyes. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unusual about Rex. His movements were too graceful, his gaze too piercing. And then there was the howling. Late at night, Rex would sit by the window, his mournful cries echoing through the dark. Jack tried to ignore the unease building inside him, telling himself that Rex was just a unique breed of dog. But deep down, he knew the truth was more complicated than that. One morning, Jack woke to find the back door ajar and Rex nowhere in sight. Panic surged through him as he threw on a jacket and headed into the woods. The thought of losing Rex was unbearable, but a nagging voice in the back of his mind whispered that Rex didn't belong to him, that he never truly had. He found Rex near the edge of the forest, standing over a fresh deer carcass. Blood stained his muzzle, and his eyes glinted with a primal intensity that made Jack's breath catch. Rex looked up, his posture tense, as if caught in the act. "Rex," Jack whispered, his voice shaking, "what have you done?" Rex trotted over, nuzzling Jack's hand as if seeking reassurance, but Jack couldn't ignore the unease building in his chest. The creature he had brought into his home wasn't a dog. The realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. Rex was a wolf. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Jack's mind raced with questions. How had he not seen it sooner? What did this mean for their bond? Despite the fear gnawing at him, Jack couldn't bring himself to abandon Rex. He had saved him, brought him back from the brink of death. Surely that meant something. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized how dangerous the situation was. A wolf was not a pet. It was a wild animal, a predator. Could he really keep Rex in his home, among his neighbors, without putting everyone at risk? That night, Jack sat by the fire, Rex curled at his feet. The room felt heavy with unspoken truths. Jack reached out, running a hand through Rex's fur. "What am I going to do with you?" he murmured. Rex looked up at him, his golden eyes filled with a depth of understanding that both comforted and unnerved Jack. The next day, Jack decided to test a theory. He led Rex to the edge of the forest, where the dense trees created a wall of green. He wanted to see if Rex would run, if the call of the wild would be stronger than the bond they had formed. Jack stood back, watching as Rex sniffed the air, his posture alert. "Go on," Jack said, his voice tight. "If this is where you belong, I won't stop you." For a moment, Rex froze, his head turning back to Jack. The golden eyes seemed to search Jack's face, as if weighing the offer. Slowly, Rex walked toward the trees, disappearing into the shadows. Jack's heart sank. He had done the right thing, hadn't he? But minutes later, a rustling sound made Jack turn. Rex was back, trotting toward him with a confident stride. Jack felt a wave of relief and confusion. Why had he come back? Was this loyalty or something else? As they walked home, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that their connection went deeper than he understood. Rex wasn't just a wild animal, he was something extraordinary, something Jack wasn't ready to let go of. Weeks passed, and Jack's unease grew. He knew keeping Rex was unsustainable. The wolf deserved freedom, a life unbound by human rules and walls. Jack made his decision on a cold, misty morning. They drove deep into the forest, to a clearing Jack had scouted earlier. Rex sat in the truck, his golden eyes fixed on Jack, as if sensing what was coming. Jack knelt before him, resting a hand on his thick fur. "Rex, you've been more than a companion, but this isn't your place," Jack said, his voice breaking. "You deserve to be wild, to be free." Rex pressed his head against Jack's chest, his weight anchoring Jack in the moment. Slowly, Jack opened the truck door. Rex stepped out, hesitating at the tree line. He turned one last time, his gaze meeting Jack's, a silent understanding passing between them. Then he disappeared into the woods. Jack stood there for a long time, the sound of his breathing mingling with the whispers of the forest. That night, back home, Jack thought the house would feel empty, but it didn't. Rex's spirit lingered in every corner. As Jack sat on the porch, a long mournful howl echoed through the night. Jack smiled through his tears, knowing Rex was out there, where he belonged. Months later, Jack returned to the clearing, curious if he might catch a glimpse of Rex. He waited for hours, the forest alive with its usual symphony of sounds. Just as he turned to leave, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Rex stood at the edge of the clearing, his golden eyes glowing in the twilight. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Rex howled, the sound resonating deep within Jack's chest. It was a farewell and a promise, a reminder that their bond was eternal. If you loved Jack and Rex's journey, don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Hit the subscribe button and join us for the next adventure.